I just want to thank God for this opportunity to be here with you guys. As you can see from the tag in front of me, there's a word that I just don't like. Not because I didn't earn it. I work to be a minister. I work hard to be a PhD student. But the word victim, did you see that? There's none of us here present that would want to be associated with the word victim. You're already traumatized. We have a saying back home in Nigeria or most part of African country that when a snake bites you, anywhere you see a rope on the ground, you will start running. You'll be imagining it's another snake that is going to bite you. So the word victim, the non-victim isn't good. It traumatizes. You can imagine over all these years, it's still a stigma. Whenever I heard the word terror, Islamic militants, I'm like, so where am I headed to this time around? In early 2001, 2002, just when it is loading, early enough, that's just when it is beginning. What we are having today began in those early years. In 2001, you know of the Just crisis, days and days and days, more than a whole 2 weeks. There was no person going out of Jos City, no any person coming into the city. And then I was a chaplain at the hospital. Many people were trapped, completely trapped in. There was no food, literally no food. And as a hospital chaplain and as a minister, I have the obligation to go out and look for food. On my way back, having secure food and bread, right with the hospital van, clearly written, hospital van, you see the cross, you see everything. And it's like I was being the one they've been looking for. The people I ran into were people in uniform. For me, that was safety. You get the point? That was safety for me. Oh, finally, here are the military. Unknowingly, those were the guys that finally took me. I had no clue what happened again. But most of them, for some reason, knows me because I serve also as a seminary professor at Equa Theological Seminary. So I was well known in the city, quite well known by almost everybody. But God, in his infinite mercy, I regained my freedom. The second was another 2002. We are out on a medical outreach. The Yelwan Shandam crisis, you all know, you've read about it. Genocide. Killings, little issue just packed that problem. And again, I was taken for the second time. I'm here today by the grace of God. Millions and thousands are not alive to share what their experience were. And I am fortunate. And because I'm fortunate, and because I'm here by the grace of God, there's absolutely no reason why U.S. government cannot support us with a special envoy. We need a special envoy. I've said that over and over again to Sans Brandbach. We need help. We do have voice, but the voices are not strong enough to be heard. You need someone to help you to raise more voice, to enable you to be more stronger than you are, so that the case would be resolved. We all know what's happening in the middle belt of northern Nigeria, not only about the northeast or the entire country. So we need a help. And I would be grateful that if this help can come now, not tomorrow, now. Now is the day of salvation. Our people are in dear need of help. Thank you.
I want to say a very big thank you for this opportunity. Like Honorable Tawase, my brother here, has spoken. Like he said, I want to comment from where he said this kind of militancy and this kind of attack happen in different states all over the state. I want to talk specifically about an encounter my husband had with them. My husband is from Ogun State. He was on his way one day from, in August 2016 precisely, he was on his way from his hometown, Kogi, Ogun State, to Lagos State where we reside. And he was attacked by these herdsmen, young guys with AK-47. So the question is, they are supposed to be herdsmen taking care of cows. How did they get AK-47? We know that these occurrences, these people, these perpetrators, they are being sponsored by some people. We can't begin to mention names, but these are the people that caused this kind of thing. I know the trauma. He was beaten. He was hit with a gun on his head. He was in the hospital for weeks. But I thank God that I'm not a widow now. It was only God that saved him that day, because the little ones, according to him, were saying he should be killed. But to God be the glory. One of them said, "What do you want us to take again from this man? He has given everything. He gave money. He gave all the 2 phones that he has on him." And well, that is for my husband. Yes, we thank God that he was okay. He's okay. He's very okay now. But the trauma is still there. Even my kids are very afraid to travel now. Then I remember just this April in Kogi State, a sister of mine was kidnapped. I am from Kaba in Kogi State. She went for a function in Iyere, and she was kidnapped by this herdsmen. She, along with one other general, was kidnapped. Though we thank God they were released, but she's still going through a lot now. We've seen a lot of this happening so many times. We see people killed on that same bridge. We call it Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. People are killed there day in, day out. But most of these informations don't even get into the news. So we have so many people out there that are so helpless. We need their voice to be heard. We can't help ourselves. We shout, but we are not heard. Maybe we are not loud enough. So we are calling on the U.S. government to help us to intervene, to talk to the people that are concerned, to talk to our governments, because they know what buttons they can press. They know those they can talk to. And I pray that the Lord will help the U.S. government to know what to say, how to approach this. Thank you very much.
We've heard testimonies today of those who've suffered, who have experienced the brunt and have been survivors. I look at the victimization, but I also realize that there are survivors who are telling their stories. We need to stand in the gap with them as they tell their stories. We heard already in the first panel about solutions, one of which would be to declare genocide, or at least genocidal activities taking place. Well, where do you do that? Jubilee campaign has been engaged with the International Criminal Court specific to the situation in Nigeria. We've been active there since 2010. And one of the ways that we present information and documentation is with their investigative offices in The Hague, the Netherlands. It's important to inform and to provide documentation as to what's taking place. When we first got started trying to educate the International Criminal Court, the narrative was actually to be blaming the governor at that time of Plateau State for violence against their religious communities. Sadly to say, it was the wrong narrative. We were able to present reports and documentation and evidence to show that, in fact, The perpetrators at that time was Boko Haram. And after we presented them with reports, they actually indicted Boko Haram as an organization. 2 years ago, we again presented reports to the International Criminal Court, raising the Cattlemen Herders Association and various other related groups, declaring that these groups are perpetrators of the violence. We've circulated today a report, Nigeria, this genocide is loading, a report to the International Criminal Court. This is just a summary. We're wanting to put together, as Congressman Wolf has stated several times over, a more detailed report specific to documenting that those being persecuted that the standard of genocide has now been reached. We've been arguing for several years now, as well as to the International Criminal Court, that these have been crimes against humanity. When the ICC indicted Boko Haram, they used the term crimes against humanity. I believe, legally, that we're now rising to the place of genocide. If you look at international standards, and we've referenced them in the report we're circulating, each of these items have actually, criteria have actually been reached. Killing members of a group. We're arguing that the group is the religious designation of Christian, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group. Both survivors today have testified, speaking to what they've suffered, but how many other testimonies have we already heard and are well documented as to bodily and mental harm? Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction in whole or in part. We know that's true in specific regions in the Northeast, specific states, and specific areas. Imposing measures to prevent births within the group or forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Those may be weaker elements, but certainly the first three are elements have been found. And with sufficient documentation, it's our design, our desire to show that what is taking place today in the Northeast of Nigeria is genocide. We believe that genocide is loading. We believe that genocidal behavior and conduct has been taking place, and that the perpetrators are not being prosecuted by the Nigerian government. We heard today in the first panel from the Chief of Staff in Benue State to the Benue State Governor. We heard from him exactly how the federal government has not actually been carrying out safety or providing safety or fortitude to those who are targets, are the victimized targets. So we know that in Nigeria, it's the federal government that runs the police. We know that in Nigeria, it's the federal government which controls the military. We also know it's the federal government that has absolutely failed to provide sufficient police protection or otherwise training, whatever may be needed on the ground to protect the vulnerable communities. Why are there 180,000 IDPs in Benue State? Why are there nearly 1 million IDPs from the northeast of Nigeria? It isn't only Boko Haram. It's also Fulani herdsmen militants that are behind these attacks. And it's our objective to bring about an effective investigation into the situation of who's perpetrating, why the Nigerian government, the federal government, is absolutely failing to protect those who are being victimized, and the massive assaults on these communities. Every single day, nearly every single day, I wake up with text messages from partners in Nigeria, such as this morning, herdsmen stab a 49-year-old farmer to death in Ogun. Frankly, I don't know where Ogun is. I don't know this 49-year-old farmer, but when I wake up and read that, I weep. And it's the conscience of all of us around the world that need to weep when we read that. And if you get that every single day, and that's how you wake up, you realize it's up to us to do something. And we're here to gather together, to speak up, and to do something. And I am grateful for all of you who have gathered in this meeting. And we need to take what we've learned and take it beyond the doors here. And we need to speak up for those who are both victims and have already died, and may their blood not be wasted, but may they be remembered, and may we carry forward for the survivors to reestablish and rehabilitate. And that's our goal, and that's our objective, and that's why we're here today. And we are grateful for all of you to be here, but please speak up everywhere you can to ensure that justice is done and perpetrators are prosecuted and the violence stops. Thank you.
Thank you. Honored to be part of this group. And I get the same text messages that Ann gets. The other day, my daughter gave me a new phone, and she was trying to change all of my photos over from the old phone to the new phone. And she looked at the pictures I had and said, "What are these? This is awful. Why are these on your phone?" It was pictures from Nigeria. It was pictures of people slaughtered in Nigeria. And she said, "You shouldn't have those on your phone." And I said, "Well, I have them on my phone because I need to know what's going on. I can't even put most of them on Facebook or on Twitter because I'll be banned again. But we have to know, we have to carry this knowledge with us of people who are suffering the way these people in Nigeria are. For me, it goes to my church, my own personal church connections. I belong to a denomination that kicked some of its members out, and it was the Anglican Church of Nigeria that welcomed us in and gave us a home when we were homeless for a while. So this has been a connection that has been very valuable to me, something that I treasure. And what I want you to know, and we've been talking about this the whole time, about genocide, about, well, if you don't say it's genocide, that means you're in denial. If you're in denial, you have a false narrative. And we have heard the false narrative over and over. The herdsmen and the cowmen. Why can't the farmers? Why can't the herdsmen and the farmers be friends? You know, the old Oklahoma tune. It's not like that. It's not about that. Yeah. As we have heard, it's about the land grabbing. It's about a systematic approach to ridding the land of people who, as my fellow panelist in the other panel said, that Sir Amadou Bello said, use the minorities in the North as willing tools and the South as a conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us. So that's an important point. This has gone on for a long time, not the way it's going on now, but it has gone on. There's also a strong connection between the Islamist supremacists in Nigeria and those of Sudan. Now, we're hearing about different things happening in Sudan, about Bashir being gone and everything, but it still is true that the plans remain the same. And a top secret meeting of their National Intelligence and Security Services talked about Boko Haram and linking it with the Islamist State that was coming through Khartoum, linking this is the government of Sudan saying that they would link Boko Haram with the Islamists in Somalia, saying the idea of locating the extremist organizations to South Sudan could link them with many places. The area could link them to the West Africa with Boko Haram and to the east with Somalia. That was Ibrahim Gandour, who was the foreign minister at the time of that meeting, planning to use Boko Haram in South Sudan to punish President Salva Kiir, and on and on. So that's another part that people don't talk about very much. But as you've heard, we hear that this is not an orchestrated issue. This is a herdsman versus farmers issue. But that does not explain things. I remember going to meetings at the State Department, and you were there too, and one official at the State Department was determined to see Boko Haram as a disenfranchised, impoverished group of youth, said that they needed midnight basketball as a deterrent from violence. Forget the fact that they were driving around the northern and middle belts in fully loaded SUVs, accompanied by their own chef. So you kill a few people, and then the chef makes up a dinner for you. The elites complained that they were just in need of job counseling. But we finally broke through that false narrative on Boko Haram, and as you've heard, they were designated an FTO in November 2013. Now, as I said, especially for those of you who are Americans, I'd say the diaspora too, but those of us who just care, it doesn't have to just be the diaspora. We need to break that false narrative. We need to say what is really going on so that it can be stopped, so that there will be accountability and vindication for those who have died, and punishment for those who are doing it, and just to stop it. That's basically, we just want to see it stop. So another part of this, you hear that it has to do with global warming and climate change, that's responsible for the attacks on the farmers by the herdsmen. And another point of this that we didn't talk about quite as much, I did hear it mentioned though, not only it's a herdsman-farmer thing, but the idea of the moral equivalence, that both sides are equally at fault, that these are violent clashes between two groups, which makes you think that, they're fighting each other the same, when really, as we said, if you're asleep in your bed and someone comes in and kills you, that's not a violent clash between two groups. That is a deliberate attack. So we really, it's as Congressman Wolf said, the Bible is clear about our need to speak up for those who are being persecuted and to bring justice for those who are victims. And as my brother said, but he is not a victim. He has triumphed. And what we know too is that all those who have been victims, that God will not allow their blood to be shed for no reason at all. That there will be not just that there will be a change in this life, but that we know that everything is precious to Him. And for me, going back to those pictures, I just have to remember where it talks about the martyrs standing before God in the book of Revelation and says that God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more crying and no more weeping, and that the Lamb at the center will be their light. And that day is coming, but until it comes, we have a lot of work to do, people. So let's get on with it. Thank you.